Shafer produces some of the most iconic wines of Napa Valley, especially their Hillside Select, which sells for hundreds of dollars a bottle. But they're also some of the most fun and down-to-earth people I've ever met in Napa. John Shafer left a 20-year-long career in publishing to come to Napa Valley and grow grapes. He'd never grown grapes before, and Napa barely produced any quality wine. People thought he'd gone mad. He did hope that one day he would actually make wine instead of just growing grapes, but he certainly never dreamed that he would create one of the greatest wineries in Napa, and a name that is respected around the world.
Shafer Vineyards was first established back in the early 70s. My dad moved us all out from Chicago in 1973. We pulled into Napa Valley. I had never seen a grapevine before in my life.
How old were you?
I was 17 years old. And Dad said we're moving, and it's like, hey, he paid the bills, I'm going, no problem. And we pulled into here, and it was an old 30-acre vineyard with 60-year-old vines, no winery, just a little farmhouse. And throughout the 70s, Dad replanted those 30 acres and then added another 20 acres of hillside vineyards right here on our site.
Doug brushes over the fact that it wasn't exactly easy to replant the vineyards, mainly because they were on hillsides, which are far more difficult to work than the valley floor. At the time, the grape varietals that had been planted by the old-time farmers were very different from what we associate with Napa today.
Oh man, it was really interesting. They're 60-year-old vines, old gnarly, and it was a mixture. In the same row you'd have Zinfandel, Petit Syrah, Sauvignon Blanc, Sauvignon Vert, Carignan. It was old style, totally old style. I don't think there was any Cabernet here when we moved here.
Growing grapes is not an easy business. First of all, the weather is your partner. Secondly, back in those days, there was only a rudimentary knowledge about viticulture. Lastly, there weren't many wineries to sell your grapes to, and because those wineries were only selling wines for a few dollars a bottle, the growers never got paid much. Although Doug was only in his early 20s by then, he knew the business well as he worked the vineyards alongside his father.
Oh, this was truly a business. It was tough. It was, at that time, there was not much research done, or had been done in the vineyards. People kind of used the same rootstock. They planted in very traditional methods of farming, which historically that's what happens with farming. And it's basically, try to grow grapes and try to get them at the right ripeness for the winery who wanted them, and happy to get the crops in. And also, if you're a farmer, at that time you got paid by the ton. So the motivation for the grower or the farmer was to produce as many tons as they could, which we found out later that doesn't necessarily equate to quality.
7 years after buying the property, the Shafers started building a winery. In 1978, it was clear that the Napa Valley was in the midst of a viticultural revolution, as there had been a surge in the number of new wineries in the wake of the '76 Paris tasting. The Shafers focused on producing Cabernet from their own vineyards.
So in 1982, we had two Cabernets, our regular Cabernet and something called Reserve, which was a beautiful wine. And within a year or so after being out in the market selling it, I kept getting the question from everyone, why is it Reserve? What makes it special? I said, well, we have these hillside blocks at Shafer, and we select the best, blocks to put this blend together. So at that point, we came up with the name Hillside Select to describe what that wine was all about.
Hillside Select became one of the most revered names in Napa. It was ranked above Chateau Latour and Margaux in a major blind tasting in Germany. The critics hailed it, and collectors fell over themselves to get a bottle. But the Shafer family remained only quietly proud.
It's a very good wine. We're very proud of it, and have been very fortunate people like it. It's a pretty darn good wine. We're happy with it.
Some big points?
Points are points. More importantly to me is to see someone, buy that wine at a restaurant or take it home and drink it and call or write and just say, man, that was a great wine. It tasted so good. It went great with the meal. We loved it. We had a great time. Everyone at the party loved it. So that's more important to me.
Hillside Select is extremely rich, dense, and concentrated, as you typically find from hillside vineyards. In its youth, it has a massive amount of power, but as it ages, it becomes much more complex, and the bouquet develops a myriad of complex nuances.
They drink well right out of the door, which is really nice because we are in business to sell wine. But they age beautifully. I like them at 8 or 10 years. I know some folks that have had 20, 25 years, and they say, hey, they're an old wine, but they're just holding up well, which is neat.
When I first went to visit Shafer, I was a bit intimidated. For me, it was such an iconic winery that I expected the owners to be a bit pretentious. But nothing could be further from the truth. Dag is one of the most down-to-earth winemakers you could ever hope to meet. We spoke about some of his favorite moments in wine.
My greatest moments in wine, people say, they'd probably expect me to say something like, oh, I had this great bottle of, Latache at some restaurant in New York or something like that. Those aren't. For me personally, those aren't the greatest moments, because for me, my background, my history in this business is production. I've run vineyards and made wine for a long, long time before I became president here. And my fondest memories are production memories. It's kicking around after picking grapes, at the end of the day with the pickers and having a cold beer. Before they go home, we go back to the cellar. It's doing some pump overs at 11 o'clock or midnight at night, and you're the only one here finishing up, and a tank of Cabernet, like Sunspot Cabernet, turns the corner at 11 o'clock at night. It turns the corner. It's complicated, but you're tasting it and you see it happen, and you just like, oh, the tank is just gorgeous. You turn around and go, Dad, Elias, you got to come taste this. It's like you realize no one's there. You're doing the night shift. And it's like, so you're all by yourself with this tank of Cabernet that's just gorgeous. That's a moment I'll never forget. But my true favorite, was up at the top of one of these hills. It was 1999, beautiful year. And in the thick of harvest, it was October 1st, and we just crushed 60 tons of cab off this ranch. And it was a gorgeous day. Nailed it on ripeness. Worked with the guys. I knocked off around 5, took a shower, went up the hill, and got married. And it's up on a vineyard we call Hitching Post, and the day ended up being kind of hazy, and this beautiful hazy sunset, and there's just a few people up there with us, and what could be a better day? We're making 60 tons of hillside Cabernet, and then going up and getting married. It was a great one. That was my favorite.